Topic for today's distinguished lecture is Internal Implosion in Pakistan, Regional Security Implications, and our distinguished speaker is Gopalaswami Parthasarathy. Let me tell you a little bit about Council for Strategic Affairs. Council imparts education in the field of international relations. Council fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. CSA encourages strategic studies in general to raise awareness. CSA condemns terrorism in all forms worldwide. And CSA aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. We have a monthly roundtable discussion, usually on second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. We have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on fourth Saturday of each month, generally at 10 a.m. But today we had to change the time because our distinguished guest was in a TV program. We do organize symposia, meetings, and conferences. We promote publication of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. We have a summer internship program, and we also have a fellowship training program in strategic studies. Our website address is www.councilforstrategicaffairs.org. So a little bit about today's lecture. As all of you know, that Pakistan is crumbling from within. Pakistani society is at loggerheads with military establishment. Various ethnicities are at war with each other. The theological nature of the Pakistani state, instead of gluing it together, has not been able to even keep the country together. And all of us know that this country broke up once in 1971. The current situation that prevails may likely to lead to implosion from within again, as the state cannot survive economically. Currently, Pakistan is de facto a colony of communist China. Will China be able to keep this artificial transitional rent-seeking state together? That is $1 million question. A little bit about our distinguished speaker. Gopalaswami Parthasarathy is a career Foreign Service officer who was born on May 13, 1940 and retired from service on May 31, 2000. He is a soldier diplomat. Prior to his entry to the Indian Foreign Services, Mr. Parthasarathy was a commissioned officer in Indian Army from 1963 to 1968. After having graduated with a BE degree in electrical engineering from College of Engineering in Guindy in Madras in 1962. He served as Ambassador of India to Myanmar 1992 to 1995, High Commissioner of India to Australia 1995 to 1998, High Commissioner of India to Pakistan from 1998 to year 2000, and High Commissioner of India to Cyprus in 1990 to 1992. He also served in various Indian missions abroad as second/first Secretary Ambassador of Embassy of India in Moscow, Deputy High Commissioner to Tanzania, Counsellor Embassy of India in Washington DC from 1978 to 1981, and Consul General of India in Karachi from 1980 to 1985. In New Delhi, Mr. Parthasarathy was Deputy Secretary in the Foreign Secretary's office from 1976 to 78. He has served as the spokesperson, Ministry of External Affairs, and information advisor and spokesperson to the Prime Minister's office with Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. He has also been a member of Indian delegation in several international conferences, including summits at United Nations, Non-Aligned Movement, and SAARC. Mr. Parthasarathy is currently the Chancellor of the Central University in Jammu, also President of India Habitat Center in New Delhi, and Director in India Sri Lanka Foundation. He is also a member of the Executive Committee of the Center for Air Power Studies of CAPS in the New Delhi. He was member of Government of India's Task Force to review national security structures in India. He recently headed the Special Committee of Documenting, Narrating and Exhibiting Sardar Patel's role in the integration of princely states and unification of India. He is on the panel of experts from India for Track 2 dialogues with Sri Lanka, and Ambassador Parthasarathy is also, on a columnist. He writes for a number of newspapers, magazines, academic journals in India and abroad, and on foreign policy as well as national security issues. In very brief, if I have to use a short phrase to describe our distinguished guest, he is the Dean of Indian diplomacy. He does not need any other introduction. Some housekeeping rules before I hand over the floor. Kindly mute yourself to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone to vibration mode. Do not interrupt our esteemed speaker for any reason. Only those members of audience who identify themselves will be allowed to pose questions. No anonymous questioners, please. All questions are moderated through the chat function. So send your question to the chat room. Please be very precise and specific in asking a question. Please don't send detailed comments in the form of a monologue. We are recording, and this recording will be available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. And I do believe that we are having simultaneous transmission on other social media platforms. So without further ado, I invite Ambassador Gopalaswami Parthasarathy to deliver his distinguished oration on the topic of today, internal implosion in Pakistan, regional security implications. Sir, the floor is yours. Welcome to our platform.
Well, thank you so much for your gracious invitation. Always nice to talk to people in the US. I spent 3.5 years of my career there and now visit every year because my daughter lives there. So I have a regular visit to Fremont in California, and the US, therefore, something like a second home. I was mighty pleased just over the last 2 days with the glorious way in which the NRIs represented India when the Prime Minister was there. It always, I believe, that our Indian brothers and sisters abroad do us proud. Coming to relations with Pakistan, which is my topic assigned to me, let me put it this way. I have done 2 tenures in Pakistan, one for 3.5 years and another for 2 years, 2.5 slightly. And one got to know a lot of people, got to know a lot of their likes, dislikes, and diversities, because you can't anymore describe Pakistan as a sort of unitary country. It's made up of several nationalities. You have the Punjabis, you have the Pashtuns, you have the Baloch, you have the Sindhis, and then you have what are called Mahajars. My first posting was in Karachi, full of Mahajar. Mahajar is the Urdu word for refugee. These were the people who left India on partition and joined Pakistan. You have to understand these complexities because, like us, Pakistan is a society marked with considerable diversity. The problem there is that life has been largely molded by the military. And I regarded this as a bit of a, joke, because this is what has the army done for the country is beyond me. They got into a single conflict and lost half the country in Bangladesh. But yet, and largely the Punjabi domination of the military. This, in fact, is a factor in relations that Punjab has with all other states or provinces in Pakistan. And I must say, all said and done, Um, as a person, I was warmly received. Of course, there are semblances of hostility. The media has its idiosyncrasies. The there is there was, at least in Ziaul Huq's time, a growing resort to what was called as radical Islam. But then they soon found that Islam itself can be divisive in terms of sectarian terms, Shia Sunni, and even in terms of the linguistic and cultural preferences. You don't find the Sintis particularly loving the Muhajirs. You don't find the Baloch particularly loving the Punjabi. So it's diverse. It's like India is diverse. The only problem is that India got itself a constitution, and it had a political party in the which was started under Mahatma Gandhi, the Congress, which was made up of people from all over the country. So the unity in diversity became our claim to fame or our motto for living. Pakistan did not. From the very beginning, they started becoming more and more Islamic. Religion finally came to an apex at when General Ziaul Haq, the military ruler, ruled them. And the religious, so it is not really a unitary society as people think. You will find, like in every other country where there are large Shia and Sunni populations, you have sectarian problems. And Pakistan is no different from that. But what happened, and I think I would blame particularly the US for this, that in the early stages of Pakistan, there was an American preference for military dictators. And India got its democracy firmly in place. Pakistan was coup followed by coup. In fact, my Pakistani friends told me that every country has an army, but in Pakistan, the army has a country. Now, that is the reality. And adding to that problem, the Punjabi has been Punjabi dominated, the army. And this was a problem in Bangladesh till Bangladesh's liberation because the Bengalis always claimed it was a Punjabi dominated army. This is the political side of it. There is still sort of a democracy in form, but the army calls the shots. The rulers have been successively Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif, and later on now Imran Khan. But otherwise, the leadership was rather minor and not really anything to write home about. The other point I'd like to bear in mind is that once out of their country, Pakistanis can be very friendly with Indians. In fact, I must also mention that at a personal level, which was different from my official work, um, I did, a fair amount of meetings with friends with Pakistan, mostly being business or even students, and I found them very upbeat, friendly. Of course, the military and the Punjabi establishment did not particularly love us after Bangladesh. Right now, I think Pakistan have moved into a rather difficult situation. Their economy is in shambles. Pakistan, you must remember, is a country with a savings rate of less than 5%. It is destined to grow at 1 or 2%. If a lot of American aid comes in, then you can move to 3 or 4%. But that's around the pattern in which it operates. It became a consumerist society without savings, depending much on on foreign aid. The Americans backed them for several years, and then Nixon went to the hilt of backing them and even sending a aircraft carrier to threaten India. But it resulted in only Nixon making a bit of a spectacle of himself, and Pakistan stood divided. And the other half of Pakistan, right now we have a friendly relationship with Sheikh Hasina. We trade a lot. Indian assistance goes there. In the case of Pakistan, we agreed. Pakistan, when we had the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, which linked all the subcontinental countries, got into a free trade agreement for the whole region. But it never implemented free trade with India. The same restrictions remained. And so, on the one hand, you have this bravado by the military of being, high and mighty, but yet you run scared of just a normal trade relationship with India. The very thought of, in the military's mind, of India, of Pakistan's market being flooded with Indian goods, is something for them which is appalling. And therefore, this has continued. But it worsened when Zia-ul Haq's time, when the army started supporting radical Islamic elements, which it used to the hilt by its links with the Taliban. And in the end, I think the Pakistanis had a big laugh when the Americans left, thinking they had sort of got a great victory over a superpower. But the victory was by the people in Afghanistan. And this situation is their internal situation. The worst still is their rate of savings, as I said, 4 or 5%. Your growth rate is intrinsically curtailed, especially if foreign aid comes to an end. And things went on well. They got some money from the ADB, some money from the World Bank, and so on. But ultimately, the economy was designed for collapse, which is what has happened. Right now, they have a foreign exchange reserve of $3 or $4 billion. That's it. It's what will be 1/10 the wealth of an American millionaire. That is their national foreign exchange reserve. And they have therefore, for the first time, been forced to curtail imports. Their economy, as I said, back to 1%. No savings, severe cuts, and severe inflation. So it's a country which really is finding it difficult to be at peace with itself. How can you grow at 1% or 2% when your population is growing by a higher percentage? Steadily falling per capita incomes and or stagnant per capita incomes, nearly stagnant. And therefore, all this problem. To put it all in a larger perspective, despite all this, the country is ruled by the army. The army is Punjabi dominated with a small Pashtun element, and therefore is not particularly popular in Sindh or Balochistan. And this provides to political instability, the lack of an integrated economy, and immeasurably low rates of savings. I can't see how they can get out of it. Right now, especially after some bad weather last year, they have pushed themselves into a corner. The IMF has set certain conditions which Pakistan has been unable to meet. And frankly speaking, I think the IMF conditions were very harsh. But when I speak to people from the IMF, they say this is sort of worldwide policy. So Pakistan, as I see it now, is bankrupt. $2 billion of foreign exchange, banks hardly functioning, the economy in shambles, and people are suffering. The only privileged class in this is the military, because the military decides what everybody says that every country has an army, but in Pakistan, an army has a country. So, as I see it, they're going to be in deep trouble. As I said, their economy is in shambles. And I think the United States has also got tough. They are insisting that you can't have any more freebies. You meet IMF conditions. Only then can we be guaranteed of repayment. So you have a country today, low rate of savings, barely 2% or 1% economic growth, a falling currency, which has shot the roof against the US dollar. And the other point is that they are, with regard to India, they have always believed, and this is their books, that they will divide India by low intensity conflict, encouraging Kashmir, Punjab, any part of India where there's some problem, you will have the Pakistanis jump in. It hasn't worked. And in recent days, what has happened is when New Delhi and the India as a whole decided that enough of granting special privileges to people of Kashmir, that we have been one country so long, and therefore they will also be subject to the application of the Indian constitution like any other state. I think Pakistan expected there would be a big uprising. That did not happen because I think Mr. Modi firmly put the state under president's rule, sent a capable governor, and they're growing faster than they were growing ever before. Previously, there was a large-scale information infiltration of terrorists. That has stopped, and that's where they are. And the with Afghanistan, strangely enough, they thought that the Taliban would be very grateful to them, but the Taliban said they were felt that they were being pushed around when they were in Pakistan, and now the Taliban has turned against them with a Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, for which they blame naturally India. When it is their foot soldiers, their friendly guys who are now ruling. So they have problems on both fronts. Uh, and I think really what has happened is I was listening to reading their media. They've been shaken by Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States. And I think virtually Mr. Modi and President Biden read out the riot act that they had better behave normally, no more use to terrorism, and also threatened the use of the force. The Financial Action Task Force is an international body which decides on sanctions. So they are in a real bind economically. That is the first point. People are suffering. The military, Imran Khan tried to divide them, and he paid the price. He was thrown the door. And now, whether the one likes it or not, it's the military that calls the shots. Though in name, you have now Shehbaz Sharif as the prime minister. This is going to be a long-term position in Pakistan. I can't see it changing. As I said, I have friends there, and I have no communal bent of mind. And fair enough, it's when you make friends, you do feel. But they are the people who've committed harakiri, low rate of savings, trying to have a foreign policy and pretend you will have your Gulf, your influence extend over the Gulf countries and over the neighborhood. At the end of the day, what do they have? They have the UAE and Saudi Arabia having a great relationship with us, while Pakistan looks by the side. So it is I wouldn't call it a failed state, but it is a state in deep trouble, not knowing what to do, because as long as foreign aid does not start, they've gotten used to foreign aid, and it's going to be pretty bad. So for the present, I think the Americans are the bad guys after having been good guys for about 6 decades. India will always remain bad guys, but I must say that there has been an element of sanity. I must also tell you that even on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, we almost found a solution during the time of Dr. Manmohan Singh. It on a very good formula that borders cannot be changed, but they can be made irrelevant, meaning you can have free travel, trade, whatever you want across Kashmir. Um, and Manmohan Singh, being an economist, did that. So Pakistan now is in this situation. The Americans are not in a hurry to help. The IMF and the World Bank and other institutions are holding back till the IMF clears it. Once the IMF clears, you'll get some foreign aid, some, particularly I think Arab countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia and maybe Kuwait will push in some funds. But the larger question is, how long can you live on foreign loans? So now they are blaming the US after the Modi visit to the United States. But I think the US also had got a bit tired of this, constant uh, backing to radical Islamic elements by Pakistan. And let's not forget, the US was forced out of Afghanistan by Pakistani assistance to the Taliban. That is the reality, and that's not accepted. So the point is that we are being uh, saying nothing very much on Pakistan. We have always said we can talk, but call off formally this aid to terrorism because many have already been killed or fled or whatever. They won't accept that they're involved in it. So we'll have to wait to to see what they do. There was some elements in, like a former Army Chief General Bajwa, well disposed towards the United States, but the others are really not much involved in foreign affairs. And I feel sorry for the ordinary people, for the young children and students, and can only wish them well. But right now, they've been forced to cool off on terrorism. They realize that terrorism can be a two-ended sword, and they have their own problems. So we are just waiting to see what move they make, whether they want better relations with us. They have been pretty rhetorical and vicious, particularly their foreign minister, Bhutto. But he's a young politician, I think, trying to climb up. I have my doubts if he will ever emulate his grandfather, who was the prime minister, or his mother, who was also a prime minister and was a very good friend of mine. Thank you.
You are on mute, Aditinji.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Parthasarathy, for your talk. Before we go on to questions from the audience, I will request you to touch on a couple of issues that I have in mind. One is that China's involvement in Pakistan is multifold now. It's not just economic, but Pakistan is being used as a Chinese colony. PLA troops are in Pakistan, not at just one place. Previously, they were in POK, but now they are supposedly in Baluchistan also at the Gwadar port to protect Chinese engineers. And wherever the CPAC goes through, what are your views on this tight relationship between Pakistan and China effectively becoming one country against India?
Well, the Chinese will not touch the Pakistanis with a barge pole. But the reality is that China, and this is a fact not known by many, perhaps some of the scientists in the Federation of American Scientists know about it. There is no such thing as a Pakistani nuclear weapons program or a Pakistani missile program. The Chinese have provided them the entire designs for the nuclear arsenal. They have about 170 nuclear weapons, and they have been given missiles which can, by the Chinese, which can hit every city or portion of India from Delhi to Andaman and Nicobar. That is the reality. And that is a point which had also worried the US. But there was a time when the US had other priorities. There was even a time when the Chinese were good friends. But right now, that's not the case. And China has another policy. It has spent billions on building roads and infrastructure policy uh, projects in Pakistan. But though on aid, ostensibly, the guys have to pay an interest after some time. So Pakistan has got itself into a debt trap with Chinese projects which are not delivering economically, but they are having to now pay for. And I am told that the Chinese have sort of given them a relief on debt repayment in their present economic situation. If the Chinese were to demand it, they would have to mortgage Pakistan to China. The reality, therefore, is that China uses Pakistan as an instrument to pressurize India. Let us be very, very clear. Pakistan does what it does on terrorism because it has believed that it is operating behind a nuclear umbrella of bombs. Of course, the material was Pakistani, but designed, produced along with missiles for Pakistan. And that's what sort of encourages Pakistan to go ahead with terrorism. Now, our own relations with China were going up pretty well till President Xi Jinping came along. And though Prime Minister Modi rolled out the red carpet, they both assumed office at around the same time in 2014. She has proved to be, I would put it mildly, hostile. Uh, we've had situations on the border, especially in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and the last shootouts were pretty heavy in Ladakh. Again, last year, the same thing happened in Arunachal Pradesh in the east, bordering Assam. But this time they were pushed back and pushed out. The last time the terrain was such that they hold on to some small areas of land, which I don't think people are right now going to get shed lives about. We are trying to negotiate with them to see how it will work. It had worked sometimes when you had a person like Deng Xiaoping as the Chinese president. I can't see it working out with Xi Jinping. Uh, Pointedly hostile, and what surprised me was that this was in South India, and I happened to be on a holiday in Mahabalipuram when near Chennai. It's a beautiful temple town, which was being ancient Tamil temples where Chinese ships used to come in the 12th century. So Mr. Modi was showing him around. He seemed okay, pleased. So we gave him the red carpet. But at the end of the day, he proved different. I think, amongst other reasons, he came with illusions about China being the sole power in Asia. Now, that is not something we would agree to, at least even in South Asia or in the Gulf. And there are now also China is facing problems of its expansion into the Indian Ocean and even in the Pacific. So, and the Americans have taken cudgels. So, what they're finding now, and I think it's no secret, that this is the one of the factors for growing military cooperation between US and India. The Americans need us, especially in what I call the channel from the Straits of Hormuz to the Malacca Straits, that which is across the Indian Ocean. It's largely patrolled by the Indian Navy with 2 aircraft carriers. So they that's where it stands in military terms. But how it will play out, we have to wait and see. They're expanding, and one of the other things is they're pretty upset with our relations with the US. And the answer to that is very simple. You behave properly with us the way the Russians behave, we keep out. We won't do that when you fool around on our territory and undermine us in our immediate neighborhood. So this rivalry will continue. For example, India has responded by providing BrahMos medium-range missiles to Vietnam and to the Philippines, both countries having maritime boundary disputes with China. So, as they say in Hindi, hum bhi doodh ke dhule hue nahi hai, to put it that way. And that's where it stands with China. So, I regard Pakistan as more of a nuisance than a threat now. China, it's different. And I think if you read the declaration between Mr. Modi and President Biden, you would see very clearly references to both China and Pakistan. Because at long last, we have told them, you can't play this game the way you want it. Because, Pakistan, no, nice guys. China is big deal. The two of them together, they're sort of joined by inseparable joints. So we're into it. But I must say, in my days, I found Ronald Reagan easier to deal with than Carter. But in our case, whether whether it is Republican or Democrat, we get on okay. I mean, even President Trump came across to India. Had a good discussion with them. The US and India should be natural partners. I say that I come to America once every year, and I've been saying that time and again. And the Indian community there has a great responsibility to do. Thank you.
My next issue is, especially over the last 20 years, as India and US warm up their relationship or partnership and make it much more multidimensional and comprehensive, Russia has from time to time played Pakistan card, and there's a possibility of an RCP axis evolving. Even prior to Ukraine war, Russia was, ignoring Indian interests, boosting up Pakistan. Lavrov actually was sort of boosting up Pakistan. They had their commercial interests, North-South corridor, pipeline project, and things like that. Yes, China has been using Pakistan for its own purposes. Do you envisage a trilateral of Russia, Pakistan, and China becoming somewhat anti-India bloc?
No, it will be a formal, there will be no formal agreement. They will work together. For example, the Russians were furious with Pakistan providing weapons to Ukraine. They had to back off because the Chinese asked them to do it, and they're providing aid. The Russians know that we bear them no enmity, we bear them no ill will. And let's be real. In the past, when we were in trouble, I recall I was in Moscow in 1971, when during the Bangladesh conflict, when we had the United States, China, and Pakistan working against us. So, history keeps changing, events keep changing. But I don't see Russia taking any interest in joining an alliance against India. It will provide, right now, it's even getting ammunition from China. Over a long period of time, much of the fighter aircraft and so on, designs and other things have been passed on to China. But China is now building its own. And I think the only persons who can challenge that are the United States. But we will spare no effort to balance Chinese power in our neighborhood. And the Chinese know it.
I'm going to the questions from the audience, and there's a question from Siva Kumar Rajgopalan from New Jersey. Why can't India covertly facilitate the balkanization of Pakistan?
Well, right now we're not into changing geography. We've done it once. But I think doing it may not prove very productive because you will have a small Punjabi rump full of nuclear weapons, and there is nothing in it. And not only that, most countries in our neighborhood, particularly in our west, would not favor India taking military action. If Pakistan chooses to fall apart on its own, it's fine. If they chose to remain as the state they are, with a less than 1% growth, that's their business. As long as their population doesn't come into India. So there is really, let's face it, by peaceful means, this is not going to happen. And you are not going to face up with a nuclear weapons power for some objective of that nature. I think you should remember that at the time the Chinese were helping Pakistan in the nuclear weapons program in the earlier days, there were American presidents who chose to look the other way because they didn't want to embarrass China. So in this world, as the British say, there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies. There are permanent interests for every nation. And in the case of the US, I think I am seeing now, and I would like to also praise the commitment and the work of the Indian community there, that how do they say in Hindi, chehra badal gaya hai. The face has changed. And I think the US realizes, if you see on the declaration of Mr. Biden and Mr. Modi, They've just spoken in general principles about Ukraine. They've not gotten into passing judgment. We don't want to pass judgment. Why should we pass judgment on a power which has never caused us harm and has done us pretty much of good in the past? That does not justify, I'm saying that we are not justifying what has happened in Ukraine. But that is the reality. And if the Russians start getting other thoughts, then we'll have another look at it.
On the same issue, Biden administration in the first 2 years, despite this successful visit, was giving very ambivalent signals. And one of those ambivalent signals was $450 million upgrading package for F-16s for Pakistan, which was called a sustainment package euphemistically. So yes, the visit is good and sky is the limit from the seas. But US also has certain tricks all the time. As they say, international relations are not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
So US is still keeping its foot into the GHQ by providing a bankrupt state $450 million.
Well, I look at it this way, that Mr. Biden, politicians change. I remember I was dealing with Pakistan. No, I think I was visiting Pakistan when Mr. Biden was the vice president. And it is normal for the army chief to call on the vice president. Mr. Biden took it on himself to travel all the way from uh, to Rawalpindi from Islamabad, where he was staying, just to meet with the army chief. I mean, a vice president meeting the army chief, and that to the vice president struck me as odd. But that was 2011, and we are now 2044, 2023. So we're okay. People change, and I don't know. Initially, I think there was some reluctance, but then the reality dawned. Look, the United States needs us also because our reach in maritime terms extends across the Indian Ocean. You can't have US looking for individual Chinese submarines around our waters or on the waters of the Persian Gulf. So these are sort of realities which come about. And in any case, I think we believe we have enough good envoys by the Indian community there to, to, to point out these things. But as an anti politician, I told you about Mr. Biden then and Mr. Biden now.
The next question is from Dr. Vineet Singh, but that is about Pakistan-China relationship and its implication for India. That question has already been answered, so I'm not going to repeat it since you have dealt at length on that question. There's a question from Mr. Vijay Nilikeni, and that is an interesting question. Isn't there a long-term risk of Russia becoming a client state of China? By many measures, Russia is a third world country. There's a serious long-term risk of relying on China, on Russia as a reliable ally or security partner.
Look, that's a good question. Every country goes through its ups and downs. But let's not forget facts. Russia's natural resources are so huge that nobody can do anything. We are getting good oil from them at good prices. That's what, and the whole of Europe is doing it. So it's easier said. Russia will suffer a setback to its economy, but all this talk that it is going to collapse or people are not going to be fed, that's carrying things too far. In fact, if you would have seen, most of the African leaders who've been traveling around have said what I'm saying. You have a problem with the Russians in Ukraine, it's your business. After all, nobody came and helped us when we had 12 million refugees from Bangladesh. We fought our battle. We will show certainly diplomatic understanding for the United States. We will always make an effort to persuade them to get together with the Russians. But that is really ultimately their own task. And yes, with China, we share a common interest because both of us face a threat. India keeps away from interfering in events in distant countries. We are not the United States. We do not have the power of the United States. So we have to live within our means. I mean, after all, we restrict defense spending to somewhere around 3.5 to 4% of GDP. And even that is tough for a country where you have to be giving subsidized foodstuffs for poor across the country, or providing them the wherewithal to live. We also have our own people. They are our first responsibility.
I had actually in the introduction described you as Dean of Diplomacy. So that is proving true from the question and answers that are happening. People are asking general questions not related to the topic, but I think it's okay. So there's a question from Mr. Sunil Bharti. Is the danger of Russia using tactical nuclear weapons now more real? Isn't it true that Putin will not be able to slip it now?
You know, it's a very difficult question to answer. My own view had been that that you have the term Lakshman Rekha. I suppose everybody knows Hindi. There is a Lakshman Rekha in international relations, and my belief was that nobody would cross it. But you are it's really for I don't think the European powers want to go beyond a point with them, and therefore the question of nuclear weapons right at this point is difficult to envisage. On what grounds can the Russians use it against a non-nuclear power? So, but I think that is a warning also to outside powers by Putin that don't cross a certain limit. Things could get out of hand if you do that.
Our next couple of questions are on the topic. So there's a question from Mr. Robinder Kaul. Does India envisage taking back Gilgit and Baltistan and POK from Pakistan?
Well, formally we are committed to respecting the line of control. The Gilgit and Baltis are a different breed altogether from Kashmiris. They are not Kashmiris. They would better fit into Central Asia than South Asia. The thing is, we've got enough territory and problems in our hand. We don't want to take over POK full of its Mirpuris, who then go to Pakistani Punjab and create problems. This is why it is no. I mean, a prime minister I hold in very high respect is Dr. Manmohan Singh, and he came to the conclusion, and I think this enjoys national support, that we have enough of problems with what we have, and what we have is a homogeneous lot. Ending with the Kashmiri, you move into the other side, you get you know types of Punjabis, but not quite Punjabis. You have also Gilgit Baltistanis, who are sort of ethnically quite different. So I, for one, am quite satisfied with my territory. I don't see inviting any problems by more territory to add to it. Uh, what do we gain? We already have, we are now, for the last 2 years, the fastest growing economy in the world. People in this country want peace. They want the economy to grow. So next year we have elections. So I think we have to bear this all in mind. But because last time when I was in Pakistan, it's a very interesting thing. We had Vajpayee ji come across and visit. Then 3 days later, I got word from the intelligence that our Pakistani brethren were climbing up the hills of Kargil and across the line of control. And we had a lot of discussions with Mr. Vajpayee, which I attended. And finally, he was right and he was wise. He said, "Look, Pakistan is getting condemned for violating international law by crossing a line of control, though not a border, which both sides had agreed to respect. The international opinion, and we were quite confident. The then Army Chief General Malik told me, he said, Ambassador, just give us 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we'll sort it out. Which they did. We lost soldiers climbing up those hills. It's not easy to climb up to 18,000 feet in rather cold weather. But we did it. And this is a point, the respect for and this is Mr. Vajpayee's wording, sanctity of the line of control. We have got this, and it has been our aim since it came to make it permanent. And we have enough problems with the diversities in Jammu and Kashmir already. We don't want to invite more. They're welcome to stay in Pakistan.
Anyhow, the Prime Minister has said that it is not an Iraq war, so probably it will not be by military means. There are a couple of questions of similar nature, so I'll club them together. If Pakistan breaks, how is India going to deal with influx of hostile population, aka refugees from Pakistan?
Look, you should understand the Pakistan-India border, and then this question won't arise. Up north is Punjab. Now, the Punjabis rule the country, and therefore they are not going to come across because they're this all this, though they support this so-called Khalistan, they don't want anyone other than Muslim-dominated Punjab. So that is ruled out, and the people of Punjab have no interest in going to the other side. The Kashmiris, actually, when I have spoken to Kashmiri leaders, what the more reasonable people were willing to settle for is autonomy. Now, we could look at that, but the answer is we would want an end to terrorism before we have such discussions. So it's up in the air at the moment. So we're not interested in this business of taking a bit of land there. Look, it's not, tell me, and I'll tell you one more thing. In mountainous terrain, at the height of 16 to 18,000 feet, the soldier finds it difficult to breathe. And it would be a folly on us to send them across at those heights for military operation with no particular meaning for our national interests. We are now quite content with what we've got. Let me tell you something to my good Indian friends. Just remember one thing. India is the most unique civilization today in the world. No other country in the world has our diversity, language, culture, race in large numbers. And they are not immigrants. They are people of this country who have lived. We love this unity in diversity, and we'd like to keep it that way.
So the next question is from Mr. Lalit Parashar. Can a failing Pakistan as a diversionary tactic resort to use of nuclear weapons?
You know, my Pakistani friends, and particularly my Pakistani Punjabi friends, they love to live a life of what they call Aisho Aram, meaning relaxed and peaceful. Now, now they are not guys going to commit harakiri. I mean, before they reach Amritsar, they'll be troubled. So I don't envisage them. They will continue with little games like terrorism and trying to create incite violence in India. We can manage it.
Well, we have run out of questions. There are some duplicate questions I'm not going to repeat. It has been indeed great pleasure, Ambassador Parthasarathy, to host you on this platform. And I realize that it is way past 11 p.m. So we are highly, highly appreciative that you found time for us despite your busy schedule and agreed to move the lecture to 10 p.m. So we are highly thankful. This is the first time you are on our platform, but I hope this is not the only time.
I'll be in California later this year, God
Okay.
willing.
Okay.
So we'll have an opportunity. Thank you, Tubi. And just to say that I've lived in Washington. It was a pleasure then to interact with our brothers and sisters from India. That still continues to be my interest, more so as I have a daughter living there now.
I would also like to thank our audience who on a weekend took hour plus 1 hour plus time to attend this program. And finally, my heartfelt thanks to Team CSA, Mr. Ripudaman Pachori, Mr. Rajiv Verma, and Ankush Bhandari, who helped me organize these kind of programs. So again, we are very, very thankful to our distinguished guest. We would hope that he will grace our platform in future also. As you know that we do 2 programs a month, and this is our second program for the month of June. We will be meeting again fairly soon within a week on next Saturday, July 1st. That's also a departure from our roundtable discussion. We will be having a roundtable discussion on Indo-Pacific, IORA, and maritime security considerations. So that's a multiple panel discussion. I will encourage all of you to join for that. And with that announcement, my heartfelt thanks to everyone. Namaskar, good afternoon, and good night, sir.
Do send me a copy of this of
Okay.
the program.
Yes, we will. We will. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.